Okay, we're live on YouTube. Ay, caramba. God, I really hope like YouTube isn't spamming my fans' inboxes. If I would call Halo a form of Grimdark, no, because I would not call Halo Grimdark. I would never call Halo Grimdark. The reason being is that it's not a universe that's just expected to be dark. It's not dark for darkness' sake. It's a it's a universe that wants to have hope in it, and there is hope in it, and that it's not just like the futility of it's not just like the futility of we're constantly fighting wars, and that there's just no end to it. There was an end to the Human Covenant War, but in reality, and when writing, war is not just a oh we win and go home. War is complicated. The after effects of a war are extremely complicated, and it can be a matter of what happened, like what's happening at the end of the war. How does everybody interact with each other after the war is over? That's essentially what 343 is asking the question about when they wrote the books and everything, and when they continued the series. How do we continue Halo? And Halo is not grimdark. If it was grimdark, Chief would have been dead a long time ago. Humanity would be like the worst, the absolute worst. There are dark things in Halo, just like there are dark things in our modern world. War is not pretty. Depictions of war are never pretty, and they should never be treated as such. There's the anxiety with my Streamlabs right now, and that's driving me nuts. Hopefully it's working now. But yo, I'm done with you. Get out of here. Get the fuck out of here. I'm done with this. This was my first Warhammer book. Yeah! Horus Rising. Yeah, no, that spike of like views was just bots. Jesus Christ. My friend, I wish I had the wealth to help. Nah, you're good. We're just, we're waiting to see if Streamlabs shits the bed again. Please don't shit the bed. Please. I beg. How far into the Horus Heresy is this book? This is the literal start. This is the start of it. Like, not the start of the heresy itself, but the starting to the events that lead to it. Hello from Arizona. Hi from Canada. Hi.
I'm gonna go back to the bedroom.
Okay. I have not done a super chat yet because we have not been able to get super chats because this computer has been in the shop for 3 days! 4. 4 days. And I have had my absolute fucking limit with computers. Like, absolute fucking limit. Oh my god. Don't crash. Don't do it. How the freaking Luya. Didn't crash. Holy fucking shit, kids. We're good to go. We're astronomical. We are happy campers, dude. Holy piss, my friends. Holy piss, my friends. We have done it. Joe Exotic, we've done it. Oh my fucking god. Chat, we've done it. We've done it, chat. Woot woot. Exactly. Woot the fuck woot. This is what a happy camper looks like. Holy fucking shit. We fucking did it, kids. Holy pigs. Okay. We are live. We are good. We are active. I'm getting McDonald's after this. Holy shit. Horus bedtime story? Yes, my children. Yes. Welcome to Horus Heresy story time. Because I've gotten into reading books to people. So, why am I doing this? Well, I started reading Halo the Fall of Reach. My wife asked me to, read it to them while I was reading it. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And I've actually really liked doing it. It also helps with voice acting, which, by the way, if any of those studios come here and start, asking for me to do shit for them, fuck off. Pay your actors and pay your writers. I'm doing this for me and my audience. Audience, you want me to work for you? Pay me. And pay your fucking writers and actors, too. Don't replace us with fucking AI. That shit's boring as shit. Anyway. Horus Rising. This book came out back in 2005, I believe. Let me take a look at this copy right here. Okay, I don't know when it came out. Okay, so what is the Horus Heresy? What is Warhammer, essentially? Warhammer is the grimdark universe where humanity is an absolute fucking shit show of a theocratic, fascist society where you come out of line, you get shot. You will not be remembered. You will die in war. That is Warhammer. Everybody hates you. Everybody wants you dead. That's essentially it. This is the backstory to why humanity is the way it is at 40k. And honestly, if you want to get into Warhammer, specifically one of the Imperial factions, this is a book. This is a really good book. So, how about I stop jerking your chain and we get into this because, holy fuck, is this book good. It's also a good indicator of what fascism is and how military propaganda works. One thing, though, that I do love about these books, and I'm going to show both groups, each book comes with a section of characters in the book. Here you go. You guys go. These are people who, you will see in the book, who will talk in the book, and it's really, really good reference-wise to go back to this and go, oh, that's Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists. Oh, that's Horus Lupercal, Primarch of the Luna Wolves. So, how about we get into this, shall we? And yes, feel free to ask questions and everything. I will get to them as best I can. Don't forget that I also have a Ko-fi. Please donate to the Ko-fi if you can, because I'm poor. Please support me. Chapter 1. Blood from Misunderstanding. Our brethren in ignorance, the Emperor dies. I was there, he would say afterwards, until afterwards became a time quite devoid of laughter. I was there, the day Horus slew the Emperor. It was a delicious conceit, and his comrades would chuckle at the sheer treason of it. The story was a good one. Torgodden would usually be the one to cajole him into telling it. For Torgodden was the Joker, a man of mighty laughter and idiot tricks. And Loken would tell it again, a tale rehearsed through so many retellings, it almost told itself. Loken was always careful to make sure his audience properly understood the irony in his story. It was likely that he felt some shame about his complicity in the matter itself, for it was a case of blood spilled from misunderstanding. There was a great tragedy implicit in the tale of the Emperor's murder, a tragedy that Loken always wanted his listeners to appreciate. But the death of Serjanus was usually all that fixed their attentions. That, and the punchline. Will you read any orc books? Maybe. Maybe. It had been as far as the warp-dilated horlogs could attest. The 203rd year of the Great Crusade. Loken always set his story in its proper time and place. The commander had been War Master for about a year, since the triumphant conclusion of the Ulanor campaign, and he was anxious to prove his newfound status, particularly in the eyes of his brothers. War Master. Such a title. The fit was still new and unnatural, not yet worn in. It was a strange time to be abroad amongst the stars. They had been doing what they had been doing for 2 centuries now. But now it felt unfamiliar. It was a start of things, and an ending too. The ships of the 63rd expedition came upon the Imperium by chance. A sudden etheric storm, later declared providential by Malachurst, forced a route alteration, and they translated into the edge of a system comprising 9 worlds. 9 worlds, circling a yellow sun. Detecting the shoal of rugged expedition warships on the station of the out-system edges, the Emperor's first demanded to know their occupation and agenda. Then, he painstakingly corrected what he saw as the multifarious errors in their response. Then, he demanded fealty. He was, he explained, the Emperor of mankind. He had stoically shepherded his people through the miserable epoch of warp storms, through the age of strife, staunchly maintaining the rule and law of man. This had been expected of him, he declared. He had kept the flame of human culture alight through the aching isolation of old night. He had sustained this precious vital fragment and kept it intact until such time as the scattered diaspora of humanity re-established contact. He had rejoiced that such a time was now at hand. His soul leapt to see the orphan ships returning to the heart of the Imperium. Everything was ready and waiting. Everything had been preserved. The orphans would be embraced to his bosom, and then the great scheme of rebuilding would begin, and the Emperor and the Imperium of mankind would stretch itself out across the stars, as was its birthright. As soon as they showed him proper fealty as Emperor of mankind. The commander, quite entertained by all accounts, sent Hastur Sejanus to meet with the Emperor and deliver greeting. Sejanus was the commander's favorite, not as proud or irascible as Abaddon, nor as ruthless as Sedir, nor even as solid and venerable as Iacton Cruz. Sejanus was the perfect captain, tempered evenly in all respects, a warrior and a diplomat, in equal measure. Sejanus' martial record, second to only Abaddon's, was easily forgotten when in the company of the man himself. A beautiful man, Loken would say, building his tale, a beautiful man adored by all. No finer figure in Mark IV plate than Hastur Sejanus. That he is remembered and his deeds celebrated, even here amongst us, speaks of Sejanus' qualities. The noblest hero of the Great Crusade. That was how Loken would describe him to the eager listeners. In future times, he will be recalled with such fondness that men will name their sons after him. Sejanus was a squad out of his finest warriors from the 4th Company, traveled in system in a gilded barge, and was received for audience by the Emperor at his palace on the 3rd planet, and killed, murdered, hacked down on the onyx floor of the palace. Even as he stood before the Emperor's golden throne, Sejanus and his glory squad, Demos, Melisandre, Gorthoi, and the rest, all slaughtered by the Emperor's elite guard, the so-called Invisibles. Apparently, Sejanus had not offered the correct fealty. Indelicately, he had suggested there might actually be another emperor. The commander's grief was absolute. He had loved Serjanus like a son. They had warred side by side to effect compliance on 100 worlds. But the commander, always sanguine and wise in such matters, told his signalmen to offer the emperor another chance. The commander detested resorting to war and always sought alternative paths away from violence, where such were workable. This was a mistake, he reasoned. A terrible, terrible mistake. Peace could be salvaged. This emperor could be made to understand. It was about then that Loken liked to add that a suggestion of quote marks began to appear around the emperor's name. It was determined that a second embassy would be dispatched. Malachurst volunteered at once. The commander agreed, but ordered the spear tip forwards into assault range. The intent was clear. One hand extended in open embrace, the other ready as a fist. If the second embassy failed, or was similarly met with violence, then the fist would already be in position to strike. That somber day, Loken said, the honor of the spear tip had fallen by the customary drawing of lots to the strengths of Abaddon, Torgodon, little Horus Aximand, and Loken himself. At the order, battle musters began. The ships of the spear tip slipped forward, running under obscurement. On board, stormbirds were hauled onto their launch carriages. Weapons were issued and certified. Oaths of moment were sworn and witnessed. Armor was machined into place around the atoned bodies of the chosen. In silence, tensed and ready to be unleashed, the spear-tipped watched as the shuttle convoy, bearing Malaghurst and his envoys, arced down towards the third planet. Surface batteries smashed into the heavens as the burning scads of debris from Malaghurst's flotilla billowed away into the atmosphere. The Emperor's fleet elements rose up out of the oceans, out of the high clouds, out of the gravity wells of nearby moons. 600 warships revealed and armed for war. Abaddon broke obscurement and made a final personal plea to the Emperor, beseeching him to see sense. The warships began to fire on Abaddon's spear tip. "My commander," Abaddon relayed to the heart-waiting fleet. "There is no dealing here. This fool impostor will not listen." As the commander replied, "Illuminate him, my son, but spare all you can. That order notwithstanding, avenge the blood of my noble Serjanus. Decimate this Emperor's elite murderers, and bring the impostor to me." And so, Loken would sigh, we made war upon our brethren, so lost in ignorance. It was late evening, but the sky was saturated with light. The phototropic towers of the high city built to turn and follow the sun in their windows during the day shifted uneasily as the pulsating radiance in the heavens. Spectral shapes swam high in the upper atmosphere, ships engaging in a swirling mass, charting brief, nonsensical zodiacs with beams of their battery weapons. At ground level, around the wide, basalt platforms that formed the skirts of the palace, gunfire streamed through the air like horizontal rain, hosing coils of tracer fire that dipped and slithered heavily like snakes, die-straight zips of energy and vanished as fast as they appeared, and flurries of bolt shells like blizzarding hail down stormbirds, many of them crippled and burning, littered 20 square kilometers of the landscape. Black humanoid figures paced slowly and across the limits of this palace sprawl. They were shaped like armored men, and they trudged like men. But they were giants, each one 140 meters tall. The Mechanicus had deployed a half dozen of its Titan war engines around the Titan war engines. Around the Titans, soot-black ankle troops flooded forward in breaking waves 3 kilometers wide. The Luna Wolves surged like the surf of the wave. Thousands of gleaming white figures bobbing and running forward across the skirt platforms. Detonations bursting amongst them, lifting rippling fireballs and trees of dark brown smoke. Each blast jutted the ground with gritty thump and showered down dirt as an aftercurse. Assault craft swept in over their heads, low, between the shambling frames of the wide-spaced Titans. fanning the slowly lifting smoke clouds into sudden energetic vortexes. Every Astartes helmet was filled with vox chatter, snapping voices, chopping back and forth, their tonal edgings roughened by the transmission's quality. It was Loken's first taste of massed war since Olenor. 10th Company's first taste, too. There had been skirmishes and scraps, but nothing testing. Loken was glad to see that his cohort hadn't grown rusty. The unapologetic regime of live drills and punishing exercises he'd maintained had kept them wetted and sharp, as serious as the terms of oathsome moment they had taken just hours before. Olenor had been glorious, a hard, unstinging slog to dislodge and overthrow a bestial empire. The Greenskins had been a pertinacious and resilient foe, but they had broken his back and kicked over the embers of his revelers. The commander had won the field through the employment of his favorite practice strategy, the spear tip, thrust to tear out the throat. Ignoring the greenskin masses which had outnumbered the Crusaders 5-1, the commander had struck directly at the Overlord and his command courtier, leaving the enemy headless and without direction. The same philosophy operated here. Tear out the throat and leave the body to spasm and die. Loken and his men, and the war engines that supported them, were the edge of the blade, unsheathed for that purpose. But this was not like Olenor at all. No thickets of mud and clay-built ramparts, no ramshackle fortresses of bare metal and wire, no black powder airbursts or howling ogre foes. This was not a barbaric brawl determined by blades and upper body strength. This was modern warfare in a civilized place. This was man against man, inside the monolithic precincts of a cultured people. The enemy possessed ordnance and firearms every bit the technological match of the Legio forces, and the skill and training to use them. Through the green imaging of his visor, Loken saw armored men with energy weapons ranged against them in the lower courses of the palace. He saw tracked weapons carriages, automated artillery nests of 4 or even 8 atomic cannons shackled together on cart platforms that lumbered forward on hydraulic legs. Not like Olenor at all. That had been an ordeal. This would be a test. Equal against equal, like against like, except that for all of its martial technologies, the enemy lacked one essential quality. And that quality was locked within each and every case of Mark IV power armor. The genetically enhanced flesh and blood of the Imperials Astartes. Modified, refined, post-human, the Astartes were superior to anything they had met or would ever meet. No fighting force in the galaxy would ever hope to match the legions, unless the stars went out and madness ruled, the lawful sense turned upside down. For as Cetera had once said, "The only thing that can beat an Astartes is another Astartes." And they had all laughed at that. The impossible was nothing to be scared of. The enemy, their armor a polished magenta trimmed in silver, as Loken later discovered when he had viewed them in his helmet, firmly held the induction gates into the inner palace. They were big men, tall, thick through the chest and shoulders, and at the peak of fitness. Not one of them, not even the tallest, came up to the chin of one of the Luna Wolves. It was like fighting children. Well-armed children, it had to be said. Though the billowing smoke and the jarring detonations, Loken led the veteran first squad up the steps of a run, the plasteel soles of their boots grating on the stone. First squad, 10th Company, Hellebore Tactical Squad, gleaming giants in pearl-white armor, the wolf head insignia stark black on their auto-responsive shoulder plates. Crossfire zigzagged around them from the deafened gates ahead. The night air shimmered with the heat distortion of weapons discharge. Some kind of upright, automated motor was casting a sluggish, flaccid stream of flat munitions charged over their heads. "Kill it!" Loken heard Brother Sergeant Jubal instruct over the link. Jubal's order was given in curt arrogant of Synthonian. Their derivation world, a language the Luna Wolves had preserved for their battle tongue. The battle brother, carrying the squad's plasma cannon, obeyed without hesitation. For a dazzling half-second, a 20-meter ribbon of light linked the muzzle of his weapon to the automortar, And then the device engulfed the facade of the palace in a roasting wash of yellow flame. Dozens of enemy soldiers were cast down by the blast. Several were thrown up into the air, landing crumpled and boneless on the flight steps. "Into them!" Jubal barked. Wildfire chipped and pattered off their armor. Loken felt the distant sting of it. Brother Callan stumbled and fell, but righted himself again, almost at once. Loken saw the enemy scatter away from their charge. He swung his bolter up. His weapon had a gash in the metal of the foregrip, the legacy of a greenskin's axe during Ulanor, a cosmetic mark Loken had told the armorers not to finish out. He began to fire, not on burst, but on single shot, feeling the weapon buck and kick against his palms. Bolter rounds were explosive penetrators. The men he hit popped like blisters, or shredded like bursting fruit. Pink mist fumed off of every ruptured figure as it fell. "10th Company!" Loken shouted. "For the War Master!" The war cry was still unfamiliar, just another aspect of the newness. It was the first time Loken had declaimed it in war, the first chance he'd had since the honor had been bestowed by the Emperor after Ulanor. By the Emperor, the true Emperor. "Lupercal! Lupercal!" The wolves yelled back as they streamed in, choosing to answer with the old cry, the Legion's pet name for their beloved commander. The war horns of the Titans boomed. They stormed the palace. Loken paused by one of the induction gates, urging his frontrunners in, carefully reviewing the advance of his company's main force. Hellish fire continued to rake them from the upper balconies and towers. In the far distance, a brilliant dome of light suddenly lifted into the sky, astonishingly bright and vivid. Loken's visor automatically dimmed. The ground trembled with a noise, like a thunderclap reached him. A capital ship of some size, stricken in a blaze, had fallen out of the sky and impacted the outskirts of the high city. Drawn by the flash and phosphorescent towers above him, fidgeted and rotated. Reports flooded in. Aximan's force, 5th Company, had secured the Regency and the pavilions of the ornamental lakes to the west of the high city. Torgon's men were driving up through the lower town, slaying the armor sent to block them. Loken looked east. 3 kilometers away, across the flat plain of the basalt platforms, across the tide of charging men and striding titans, and stitching fire, Abaddon's company, 1st Company, was crossing the bulwarks into the far flanks of the palace. Loken magnified his view, resolving hundreds of white-armored figures pouring through the smoke and chop fire. At the front of them, the dark figures of the 1st Company's foremost Terminator squad, the Justarian. They wore polished black armor, dark as night, as if they belonged to some other Black Legion. My one complaint about this book: holy fuck, is the foreshadowing terrible. "Loken to 1st, he sent. 10th as entry." There was a pause, a brief distort. Then Abaddon's voice answered. "Loken? Loken? Are you trying to shame me with your diligence?" "Not for a moment, 1st Captain," Loken replied. There was a strict hierarchy of respect within the legions, and though he was a senior officer, Loken regarded the peerless 1st Captain with awe. All of the Monerville. In fact, though, Torgodon had always favored Loken with his genuine shows of friendship. Now Serjanus was gone, Loken thought. The aspect of the Monerville would soon change. "I'm playing with you, Loken," Abaddon sent, his voice so deep that some vowel sounds were blurred by the vox. "I'll meet you at the feet of the false emperor. First one there gets to illuminate him." Loken fought back a smile. Abaddon had seldom disported with him before. He felt blessed, elevated. To be a chosen man was enough, but to be in the favored elite, that was every captain's dream. Reloading, Loken entered the palace through the induction gate, stepping over the tangled corpses of the enemy dead. The plaster facings in the inner walls had been cracked and blown down, and loose crumbs like dry sand crunched under his feet. The air was full of smoke, and his visor display kept jumping from one register to another as it attempted to compensate and get a clean reading. He moved down the inner hall, hearing the echo of gunfire. From deeper into the palace compound, the body of a brother lay slumped in a doorway to his left, the large white armored corpse, odd and out of place amongst the smaller enemy bodies. Margex, one of the Legion's apothecaries, was bending over him. He glanced up as Loken approached and shook his head. "Who is it?" Loken asked. "Tybor, the second squad," Margex replied. Loken frowned as he saw the devastating head wound that had stopped Tybor. "The Emperor knows his own name," Loken said. Margex nodded and reached into his Natherium to get his reductor tool. He was about to remove Tybor's precious gene seed so that it might be returned to the Legion's banks. Loken left the apothecary to his work and pushed on down the hall. In a wide colonnade ahead, the towering walls were decorated with frescoes showing familiar scenes of a haloed emperor upon a golden throne. How blind these people are, Loken thought. How sad. This is the one day, one single day with the iterators, and they would understand. We are not the enemy. We are the same, and we bring with us a glorious message of redemption. Old night is done. Man walks the stars again, and the might of the Astartes walks at his side to keep him safe. In a broad, sloping tunnel of etched silver, Loken caught up with elements of 3rd Squad. Of all units in his company, 3rd Squad, Locasta Tactical Squad, was his favorite, and his favorite. In commander, Brother Sergeant Nero Vippus was his oldest and truest friend. "How's your humor, Captain?" Vippus asked. His pearl-white plate was smudged with soot and streaked with blood. "Phlegmatic, Nero. You?" "Corletic. Red-raged, in fact. I've just lost a man, and 2 more of mine are injured. There's something covering the junction ahead. Something heavy. Rate of fire like you wouldn't believe." "Tried fragging it? 2 or 3 grenades, no effect, and there's nothing to see, E. Garvey. We've all heard about these so-called invisibles. The ones that butcher Sergenis. I was wondering—" "Leave the wondering to me," Loken said. "Who's down?" Vippus shrugged. He was a little taller than Loken, and his strung made the heavy ribbing and plates of his armor clunk together. Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus? No. Torn to shreds before my very eyes. Oh, I feel the hand of the ship on me, Garvey. The hand of the ship, an old saying. The commander's flagship was called the Vengeful Spirit, and in times of duress or loss, the wolves liked to draw upon all that implied as a charm, a totem of retribution. "In Zacchaeus' name," Vippus growled, "I'll find this bastard invisible and soothe your color, other brother. I've no use for it," Loken said. "See to your wounded while I take a look." Vippus nodded and redirected his men. Loken pushed up past them to the disputed junction. It was a vault-roofed crossways where 4 hallways met. The area read cold and still to his imaging. Fading smoke whisked up to the tracers. The outslit floor had been chewed and peppered with thousands of impact craters. Brother Zacchaeus, his body as yet unretrieved, lay in pieces in the center of the crossway, a streaming pile of shattered white plasteel and bloody meat. Vippus had been right. There was no sign of an enemy present. No heat trace, not even a flicker of movement. But studying the area, Loken saw a heap of empty shell cases, glittering brass that had spilled out from behind a bulkhead across from him. Was that where their killer was hiding? Loken bent down and picked up a chunk of fallen plastwork. He lobbed it into the open. There was a click, and then a hammering deluge of autofire raked across the junction. It lasted 5 seconds, and in that time over 1,000 rounds were expended. Loken saw their fuming shell cases spitting out from behind the bulkhead as they were ejected. The firing stopped. Phalacine vapor fogged the junction. The gunfire scored a molten gouge across the stone floor, pummeling Zacchaeus' corpse in the process. Spots of blood and scraps of tissue had been spattered out. Loken waited. He heard a whine and the metallic clunk of an autoloader system. He read weapon heat, fading, but no body warmth. "Want a medal yet?" Vippus asked, approaching. "It's just an automatic sentry gun," Loken replied. "Well, that's a small relief at least," Vippus said. "After the grenades were pitched in that direction, I was beginning to wonder if these vaunted invisibles might be invulnerables too. I'll call up a Devastator squad support too." "Just give me a light flare," Loken said. Vipus stripped one of his leg plates and handed it to his captain. Loken ignited it with a twist of his hand and threw it down the hallway opposite. It bounced, fizzling, glaring white hot, past the hidden killer. There was a grind of servos. The implacable gunfire began to roar down the corridor as the flare, kicking it and bouncing it, ripping into the floor. Garvey, Vipus began. Loken was running. He crossed the junction, thumped his back against the bulkhead. The gun was still blazing. He wheeled around the bulkhead and saw the sentry gun built into an alcove. A squat machine set on 4 pad feet and heavily plated. It turned its short, fat pumping cans away from him to fire on the distant, flickering flare. Loken reached over and tore out a handful of its servoflexes. The gun stuttered and died. "We're clear," Loken called out. Lucasta moved up. "That's generally called showing off," Vipus remarked. Fine state... Vipus remarked. Loken led Lucasta up the corridor, and they entered a fine state apartment. Other apartment chambers, similarly regal, beckoned beyond. It was oddly still and quiet. "Which way now?" Vipus asked. "We go find this emperor," Loken said. Vipus snorted. "Just like that." "The first captain bet me I couldn't reach him first." "The first captain, eh? Since when was Garvey Loken on pally terms with him?" "Since 10th breached the palace ahead of 1st. Don't worry, Nero. I'll remember you little people when I'm famous." Nero Vipus laughed, the sound snuffling out of his helmet mask like the cough of a consumptive bull. What happened next didn't make either of them laugh at all. What do you guys think so far? This is only like chapter 1. Dark like a proper satire. Damn right. I love it. Yes. We can continue on for another chapter. 2. Meeting the Invisibles. At the foot of the Golden Throne. Lupercal. "Captain Loken?" He looked up from his work. "That's me." "Forgive me for interrupting," she said. "You're busy?" Loken set aside the segment of armor he had been polishing and rose to his feet. He was almost a meter taller than her, and naked, but for a loincloth. She sighed inwardly at the splendor of his physique. The knotted muscles, the old rigid scars. He was handsome, too, this one. Fair hair, almost silver, cut short. His pale skin slightly freckled. His eyes gray like rain. What a waste, she thought. Though there was no disguising his inhumanity, especially in the barred room. Apart from the sheer mass of him, there was overgrown gigantism on the face, that particular characteristic of the Astartes, almost equine, plus the hard, taut shell of his ribless torso, like stretched canvas. "I don't know who you are," he said, dropping a nub of polishing fiber into a little spot and wiping his fingers. She held out her hand. "Mercedes Oleton, official remembrancer," she said. He looked at her tiny hand, and then shook it, making it seem even more tiny in comparison with his own giant fist. "I'm sorry," she said, laughing. "I kept forgetting you don't do that out here. Shaking hands, I mean. Such a parasocial Terran custom." "I don't mind it. Have you come from Terra?" "I left there a year ago, dispatched to the Crusade by permit of the Council." "You're a remembrancer." "You know what that means?" "I'm not stupid," Loken said. "Of course not," she said hurriedly. "I meant no offense." "None taken." He eyed her. Small and frail, though possibly beautiful. Loken had very little experience of women. Perhaps they were all frail and beautiful. He knew enough to know that they were as black as her. There were few as black as her. Her skin was like burnished coal. He wondered if it were some kind of dye. He wondered too about her skull. Her head was bald but not shaved. It seemed polished and smooth as if it had never known hair. The cranium was enhanced somehow, extending back in a streamlined sweep that formed a broad ovoid behind her nape. It was like she had been crowned, as if her simple humanity had been made more regal. "How can I help?" he asked. "I understand you have a story, a particularly entertaining one. I'd like you to remember it, for posterity." "Which story?" "Horus killing the Emperor?" He stiffened. He didn't like it when non-Astartes humans called the War Master by his true name. That happened months ago, he said dismissively. I'm sure I won't remember the details particularly well. Actually, she said, I have it on good authority you can be persuaded to tell the tale quite expertly. I've been told it's very popular amongst your brothers. Loken frowned. Annoyingly, the woman was correct. Since the talking of the high city, he had been required, forced would not be too strong a word, to retell his first-hand account of the events in the palace, Alice Tower, on dozens of occasions. He presumed it was because of Sejanus' death. The Luna Wolves nodded catharsis. They needed to hear how Sejanus had been and so singularly avenged. Someone put you up to this, Mistress Olatin, he asked. She shrugged. Captain Torgaden, actually. Loken nodded. It was usually him. What do you want to know? I understand the general situation, for I have heard it from others, but I'd love to have your personal observation. What was it like when you got inside the palace itself? What did you find? Loken sighed and looked around at the rack where his power armor was displayed. He'd only just started cleaning it. His private arming chamber was a small, shadowy vault adjoining the off-limit embarkation deck. The metal walls lacquered paled green, a cluster of glow globes lit the room, and an imperial eagle had been stenciled on one wall plate beneath which copies of Loken's various oaths of moment had been pinned. The close air smelled of oils and lapping powder. It was tranquil, introspective place, and she had invaded that tranquility. Becoming aware of her trespass, she suggested, I could come back later, at a better time. No, now's fine. He sat back down on the metal stool where he'd been perching when she'd entered. Let me see. When we got inside the palace, what we found was the Invisibles. Why were they called that? She asked. Because we couldn't see them, he replied. I love Garvey. I love him so much. He's just always so straightforward, to the point. I love him. The Invisibles were waiting for them, and they well deserved their sobriquet. Just 10 paces into the splendid apartments, the first brother died. There was an odd, hard bang, so hard it was painful to feel and hear, and Brother Idrius fell to his knees, then folded to his side. He had been struck in the face by some form of energy weapon. The white plasteel ceramite alloy of his visor and breastplate had actually deformed into a rippled crater, like heated wax that had flown and then set again. A second bang, a quick concussive vibration of air, obliterated an ornamental table beside Nero. A third bang dropped Brother Murdriad. His left leg shattered and snapped off like a reed stalk. The science adepts of the false Imperium had mastered and harnessed some rare, wonderful form of field technology, and armed their elite guard with it. They cloaked their bodies with a passive application, twisting light to render themselves visible, and they were able to project it into a merciless, active form and struck with mutilating force. Despite the fact that they had been advancing and combat ready and wary, Loken and the others were taken completely off guard. The Invisibles were even hidden to their visor arrays. Several had simply been standing in the chamber, waiting to strike. Loken began to fire, and Vipus' men did likewise, raking the area ahead of them. Splintering furniture, Loken hit something. He saw pink mist kiss the air, and something fell down with enough force to overturn a chair. Vipus scored a hit too, but not before Brother Terragus had been struck with such power that his head was punched clean off his shoulders. The cloak technology evidently hit its users best if they remained still. And they moved. They became semi-visible, heat-ray suggestions of men surging to attack. Loken adapted quickly, firing at each blemish of air. He adjusted his visor gained a full contrast, almost black and white, and saw them better. Hard outlines against the fuzzy background. He killed 3 more. In death, several lost their cloaks. Loken saw the Invisibles revealed as bloody corpses. Their armor was silver, ornately composed and machined with a remarkable detail of patterning and symbols. Tall, swathed in mantle of red silk, the Invisibles reminded Loken of the mighty custodian guard that warded the Imperial Palace on Terra. This was the bodyguard corps which had executed Serjanus and his glory squad at a mere nod from their master. Vipus was raging, offended by the cost to his squad. The hand of the ship was truly upon him. He led the way, cutting a path into a towering room beyond the scene of the ambush. His fury gave Locusta the opening it needed, but it cost him his right hand, crushed by an invisible's blast. Loken felt cooler too. Like Nero, the men of Locusta were his friends. Rituals of mourning awaited him. Even in the darkness of Olenor, victory had not been so dearly bought. Charging past Vippus, who was down on his knees, groaning in pain as he tried to pluck the mangled gauntlet off his ruined hand. Loken entered a side chamber, shooting at the air blemishes that attempted to block him. A jolt of force tore his bolter from his hand, so he reached over his hip and drew his chainsword from its scabbard. It whined as it kicked into life. He laughed at the faint outlines jostling around him and felt the toothed blade meet resistance. There was a shrill scream. Gore drizzled out of nowhere and plastered the chamber walls and the front of Loken's suit. Lupercal, he grunted and put the full force of both arms behind his stroke. Servos and mimetic polymers layered between his skin and his suit, its outer plating to form the musculature of his power armor, bunched and flexed. He landed a trio of two-handed blows. More blood showered into view. There was a warbled shriek of loops of pink. Wet viscera suddenly became visible. A moment later, the field screamed, the soldier flickered and failed, and revealed his disemboweled form, stumbling away down the length of the chamber, trying to hold his guts in with both hands. Where was I? Invisible force stabbed at Loken again, scrunching the edge of his left shoulder guard and almost knocking him off his feet. He rounded and swung the chainsword. The blade struck something, and shards of metal flew out, the shape of a human figure just out of joint with his space it occupied, as if it had been cut out of the air and nudged slightly to the left. Suddenly filled in, one of the invisibles, his charged field sparking and crackling around him as it died, became visible and swung his long-bladed lance at Loken. The blade rebounded off of Loken's helm. Loken struck low with his chainsword, ripping the lance out of the invisible silver gauntlets and buckling its aft. At the same time, Loken lunged, shoulder barging the warrior against the chamber's walls, so hard that the friable plaster of the ancient frescoes crackled and fell out. Loken stepped back, winded, his lungs and ribcage almost crushed flat. The invisible made a ganging, sucking noise and fell down on his knees, his hands lolling forward. Loken sawed his chainsword down and sharply up again in one fluid, practiced mercy stroke, and the invisible's detached head bounced away. Loken circled slowly, the humming blade raised ready in his right hand. The chamber floor was slicked with blood and black scraps of meat. Shots rang out from nearby rooms. Loken walked across the chamber and retrieved his bolter, holstering in his left fist with a clatter. Two Luna Wolves entered the chamber behind him, and Loken briskly pointed them off into the left-hand colonnade with a gesture of his sword. "Form up and advance," he snapped into his link. Voices answered him. "Nero, I'm behind you, 20 meters. How's the hand?" "I left it behind. It was getting in the way." Loken prowled forward at the end of the chamber, past the crumpled, leaking body of the Invisibles. He had disemboweled. 16 broad marble steps led up to the stoneway door. The splendid stone frame was carved with complex lineful motifs. Loken ascended the steps slowly. Molted washes of light cast spastic flickers through the open doorway. There was a remarkable stillness. Even the din of the fight engulfing the palace all around seemed to recede. Loken could hear the tiny taps made by blood dripping off his outstretched chainsword on the steps. A trail of red, beads of the white marble. He stepped through the doorway. The inner walls of the tower rose up around him. He had evidently stepped up through into one of the tallest and most massive of the palace spires, 100 meters in diameter, a kilometer tall. No more than that. He'd come out on a wide onyx platform that encircled the tower, one of several ring platforms arranged at intervals up the height of the structure, but there was more below. Peering over, Loken saw as much tower drop away into the depths of the ear as stood proud above him. He circled slowly, gazing around. Great windows of glass and some other transparent substance glazed the towers up from the bottom, between the ring platforms, and through them the light and fury of the war outside flared and flashed. No noise, just the flickering glow. The sudden burst of radiance. He followed the platform round until he found a sweep of curved stairs, flush with the tower wall that led up to the next level. He began to ascend platform to platform, scanning for any blurs of light that might betray the presence of more invisibles. Nothing. No sound. No life. No movement except the shimmer of light from outside the windows as he passed them. 5 floors. Now 6. Loken suddenly felt foolish. The tower was probably empty. This search and purge should have been left to others while he marshaled 10th Company's main force. Except, its ground level approach had been so furiously protected. He looked up, pushing his sensors hard. A third of a kilometer above him, he fancied he caught a brief sign of movement. A partial heat lock. Nero? A pause. Captain, where are you? Base of the tower. Heavy fighting. There was a jumble of noises that distorted sounds of gunfire and shouting. Captain, are you still there? Report! Heavy resistance. We're locked here. We are... The line broke. Loken had been about to give away his position anyway. There was something in this tower with him. At the very top, something was waiting. The penultimate deck. From above came a soft creaking and grinding, like the tails of a giant windmill. Loken paused. At this height, through the wide pans of glass, he was afforded a view out across the palace and the high city. A sea of luminous smoke underlit by widespread firestorms. Some buildings glowed pink, reflecting the light of the inferno. Weapons flashed and energy beams danced and jumped in the dark. Overhead, the sky was full of fire too, a mirror of the ground. The spear tip had visited murderous destruction upon the city of the Emperor. But had it found the throat? He mounted the last flight of steps, and his grip on the weapons tight. The uppermost ring platform formed the base of the tower's top section, a vast cupola of crystal glass petals ribbed together in steel spars that curved up to form a fenial mast at the apex high above. The entire structure creaked and slid, turning slightly one way then another, as it responded phototropically to the balloons of light outside the night. On one side of the platform, its black back to the great windows, sat a golden throne. It was a massive object, a heavy plinth of 3 golden steps rising as into a vast gilt chair with a high back and coiled armrests. The throne was empty. Loken lowered his weapons. He saw that the tower top turned so that the throne was always facing the light. Disappointed, Loken took a step towards the throne and then halted when he realized he wasn't alone after all. A solitary figure stood away to his left, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the spectacles of war. The figure turned. It was an elderly man, dressed in floor-length maneuver robe. His hair was thin and white, his face thinner still. He stared at Loken with glittering, miserable eyes. I defy you, he said, his accent thick and antique. I defy you, invader. Your defiance is noted, Loken replied, but this fight is over. I can see you've been watching its progress from up here. You must know that. The Imperium of Man will triumph over... The Imperium of Man will triumph over all of its enemies, the man replied. Yes, said Loken. Absolutely it will. You have my promise. The man faltered, as if he did not quite understand. Am I addressing the so-called Emperor? Loken asked. He had switched off and sheathed his sword, but he kept his bolter up to cover the robed figure. So-called, the man echoed. So-called? You cheerfully blaspheme in this royal palace. The Emperor is the Emperor undisputed, savior and the protector of the race of men. You are some impostor, some evil demon. I am a man like you. Oh, the other scoffed. You are an impostor, made like a giant, malformed and ugly. No man would wage war upon his fellow man like this. He gestured despairingly at the scene outside. Your hostility started this, Loken said calmly. You would not listen to us or believe us. You murdered our ambassadors. You brought this upon yourself. We are charged with the reunification of mankind throughout the stars in the name of the Emperor. We seek to establish compliance amongst all the fragmentary and desperate worlds. Most greet us like lost brothers. Others we are. You resisted. You came to us with lies. We came to you with the truth. Your truth is an obscenity. Sir, the truth itself is immoral. It saddens me that we believe the same words, the very same ones, but value them so differently. That difference has led directly to this bloodshed. The elderly man sagged, deflated. You could have left us alone. What? Loken asked. If our philosophies are so much at odds, you could have passed us by and left us to our lives, unviolated. Yet you did not. Why? Why did you insist on bringing ruin to us? Are we such a threat to you? Because the truth, Loken began, is immoral, so you said. But in serving your fine truth, Invader, you make yourself immoral. Loken was surprised to find they didn't know quite how to answer. He took a step forward and said, I request you surrender to me, sir. You are the commander, I take it? The elderly man asked. I command 10th Company. You are not the overall commander, then? I assumed you were as you entered this place, ahead of your troops. I was awaiting for the overall commander. I will submit to him, and him alone. The terms of your surrender are not negotiable. Will you not even do that for me? Will you not even do me that honor? I would stay here until your lord and master comes in person to accept my submission. Fetch him. Before Loken could reply, a dull wail echoed into the tower top. Gradually increasing in volume, the elderly man took a step or two backwards, fear upon his face. The black figures rose up to the tower's depths, ascending slowly, vertically up through the open center of the ring platform. 10 Astartes warriors, the blue heat of their whining jump pack burners shimmering the air behind them. Their power armor was black trimmed with white. Castellan Reaver Squad, First Company's veteran assault pack. First in, last out. One by one, they came in to land on the edge ring platform, deactivating their jump packs. Callus Ekadon, Castellan's captain, glanced sidelong at Loken. The first captain's compliments, Captain Loken. You beat us to it after all. Where is the first captain? Loken asked. Below, mopping up, Ekadon replied. He set his vox to transmit. This is Ekadon Catalan. We have secured the false emperor. No, said Loken firmly. Ekadon looked at him again. His visor lenses were stern and unreflective, like the jet glass set in the black metal of his helmet mask. He bowed slightly. My apologies, Captain, he said archly. The prisoner and the honor are yours, of course. That's not what I meant, Loken replied. This man demands the right to surrender in person to our commander-in-chief. Ekadon snorted, and several of his men laughed. This bastard can demand all he likes, Captain, Ekadon said, but he's going to be cruelly disappointed. We are dismantling an ancient empire, Captain Ekadon, Loken said firmly. Might we not display some measure of gracious respect in the execution of that act, or are we just barbarians? He murdered Serjanus, spat out one of Ekadon's men. He did, Loken agreed. So should we just murder him in response? Didn't the Emperor, praised be his name, teach us as always to be magnanimous in victory? The Emperor, praised be his name, is not with us, Ekadon replied. If he's not with us in spirit, Captain, Loken replied, then I pity the future of this crusade. Ekadon stared at Loken for a moment, then ordered his second to transmit a signal to the fleet. Loken was quite sure Ekadon not back down because he'd been convinced by any argument or fine principle. Though Ekadon, as captain of First Company's assault elite, had glory and favor on his side, Loken, a company captain, had superiority of rank. A signal has been sent to the War Master, Loken told the elderly man. Is he coming here? Now? The man asked eagerly. Arrangements will be made for you to meet him, Ekadon snapped. They waited a minute or two for a signal response. Astartes attack ships, their engines glowing, streaked past the windows. The light from huge detonations sheeted the southern skies and slowly died away. Loken watched the crisscross shadows play across the ring platform in the dying light. He suddenly realized why the elderly man had insisted so furiously that the commander should come in person to this place. He clamped his bolter to his side and began to stride towards the empty throne. "What are you doing?" the elderly man asked. "Where is he?" Oh, shit. Sorry about that. Where did I lose you guys? Hold on. Oh, that's not gonna work. And we're back. Where did I lose you guys? On TikTok. Where did I lose you? Sorry about that. My phone was dying. Ooh, I am burning hot. Where did I lose you guys? So I guess 2 paragraphs. Okay. A signal had been sent to the War Master, Loken told the elderly man. Is he coming here? Now? The man asked eagerly. Arrangements will be made for you two to meet him, Ekadon snapped. They waited for a minute or two for a signal response. Astaria's attack ships, their engines glowing, streaked past the windows. The light from huge detonations sheeted the southern skies and slowly died away. Loken watched the crisscross shadows play across the ring platform in the dying light. He started. He suddenly realized why the elderly man had insisted so furiously that the commander should come in person to this place. He clamped his bolter to his side and began to stride towards the empty throne. What are you doing? The elderly man asked. Where is he? Loken cried. Where is he really? Is he invisible too? Get back! The elderly man cried out, leaping forward to grapple with Loken. There was a loud bang. The elderly man's ribcage blew out, spattering blood tufts of burned silk and shreds of meat in all directions. He swayed, his robe shredded and on fire, and pitched over the edge of the platform. Limbs limp, his torn garments flapping, he fell away like a stone down the open drop of the palace tower. Ekadon lowered his bolt pistol. I've never killed an emperor before, he laughed. That wasn't the emperor, you idiot! Loken yelled. The emperor's been here all the time. He was close to the empty throne now, reaching a hand out to grab at the golden's armrest. A blemish of light. Almost perfect, but not so perfect that the shadows behaved correctly around it. Recoiled in the seat. This is a trap. Those 4 words were the next that Loken was going to utter. He never got the chance. The golden throne trembled and broadcast a shockwave of invisible force. It was a power like that which the elite guard had wielded, but 100 times more potent. It slammed out in all directions, casting Loken and all the Catulon off their feet like corn sheaves in a hurricane. The windows of the tower top shattered out wards and multicolored blizzards of glass fragments. Most of the Catulon Reaver squad simply vanished, blown out of the tower, arms flailing on the bow weave of energy. One struck a steel spar on his way out. Black snapped. His body tumbled away into the light like a broken doll. Ekadon managed to grab hold of another spar as he was launched backwards. He clung on, plasteel digits sinking into the metal for purchase, legs trailing out from behind him horizontally as air and glass and gravitic energy assaulted him. Loken, too close to the foot of the throne to be caught by the full force of the shockwave, was knocked flat. He slid across the ring platform towards the open fall, his white armor shrieking as it left deep grooves in the onyx surface. He went over the edge, over the sheer drop, but the wall of force carried him on like a leaf across the hole, and slammed him hard against the far lip of the ring. He grabbed on, his arms over the lip, his legs dangling, held in place, as much as by shock pressure as by the strength of his own desperate arms. Almost blacking out from the relentless force, he fought to hold on. Ikeat light, green and dazzling, sputtered into being on the platform. In front of his clawing hands, the teleport flare became too bright to behold, and then died, revealing a god standing on the edge of the platform. The god was a true giant. a large against to any Astartes warrior as an Astartes was to a normal man. His armor was white gold, like sunlight at dawn, the work of master artificers, many symbols covered in surfaces, the chief of which was the motif of a single staring eye fashioned across the breastplate. Robes of white cloth fluttered out behind the terrible haloed figure. Above the breastplate was the face was bare, grimacing perfect in every dimension and detail, suffused in radiance, so beautiful, so very beautiful. For a moment the god stood there, unflinching, beset by a gale of force, but unmoving, facing it down. Then he raised the stormbolter in his right hand and fired it into the tumult. One shot. The echo of the detonation rolled around the tower. There was a choking scream, half lost in the uproar, and the uproar itself stilled abruptly. The wall of force died away. The hurricane faded. Splinters of glass tinkled as they rained back down onto the platform. No longer impelled, Ekadon crashed back down against the blown-out steel of the window frame. His grip was secure. He clawed his way back inside and got to his feet. "My lord!" he exclaimed and dropped to one knee. His head bowed. With the pressure laughed. Loken found he could no longer support himself. Hands grappling, he began to slide back over the lip, where he had been hanging. He couldn't get any purchase of the gleaming onyx. He glipped off the edge. A strong hand grabbed him around the waist and hauled him up onto the platform. Loken rolled over, shaking. He had looked back across the ring of the golden throne. It was a smoking ruin. Its secret mechanisms exploded from within. Amidst the twisted, ruptured plates and broken workings, a smoldering corpse sat upright, teeth grinning from a blackened skull, charred, skeletal arms still braced along the throne's coiled rests. "So will I deal with the tyrants and deceivers," rumbled a deep voice. Loken looked up to the god standing over him. "Lupercal," he murmured. The god smiled. "Not so formal, please, Captain," whispered Horus. "May I ask you a question?" Mercedes Ollerton said. Loken had taken a robe down from a wall peg and was putting it on. "Of course." "Could we not have just left them alone?" "No. Ask a better question." "Very well. What is he like?" "What is who like, lady?" he asked. "Horus." "If you have to ask, you've not met him," he said. "No, I haven't yet, Captain. I've been waiting for an audience, still. I would like to know what you think of Horus." "I think he is War Master," Loken said. His tone was stone hard. "I think he is the master of the Luna Wolves and the chosen proxy of the Emperor. Praise be his name and all of our understanding. He is the first and foremost of all Primarchs, and I think I take offense when a mortal voices his name without respect or title." "Oh," she said. "I'm so sorry, Captain. I meant no—" "I'm sure you didn't. But he is War Master, Horus. Your remembrancer. Remember that." And that's where we will leave it, because I'm starving. Also, I'm getting really fucking sick and tired of these bots. Alright, but yeah, that's the end of the stream, people. If you want to support me, please go donate to my Ko-fi or sub to me on YouTube, because I stream also on YouTube. And as well, there will be merch coming, so just keep your eyes out for that one, okay? Good night, everybody.